Hello, hello, everyone, and this is another episode of the Humanitarian Effect. Today, I am joined by the lovely Paul, and we're just going to give him the floor. So, first and foremost, Paul, thank you for joining. Thank you for the transparency you're
You're
about to
welcome.
drop upon us. Thank you for the vulnerability, and we just hope that it
Thanks, man.
touches someone, or maybe just a few people today. But without further ado, our first question for you is if you could just explain some of your story to give the people some background of who Paul is.
Great. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you. Um, I don't think my story really gets interesting until 2015, about 5 years ago. I had moved to San Francisco after having been in LA for 20 some years and kind of like it's just time to do something new, moved to San Francisco, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, was actually driving for Uber for a little while and picked up the paper one morning and read an article about this woman who was putting shower buses out on the streets in the Tenderloin. I lived in the Tenderloin, so I knew the need for that there. But really, what hit me in this article was she said it's not about the shower, it's about the dignity that is given with that kind of service. It's not about the service; it's about the way you give the service and the dignity. And it just rung a bell with me. It was like that moment of something I had never heard before in anybody talking about uh, uh, answers or solutions to homelessness. And I kind of knew it, but until somebody verbalizes something, it really gelled. And all of a sudden, I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, this is my story." By 26 years old, I had lost everything. I woke up one morning on the floor of an empty house on a pile of bubble pack and packing blankets I had stolen from a moving truck and made into my bed. And I had like one or two sets of clothes. I had been borrowing money off of friends and living off of friends and doing things for a while. And I was just at the bottom, right? And I'd had enough. I'd really had enough. And the county that I lived in um, said, "Hey, if you go and do this 28-day treatment program, we'll give you your food stamps back." And all I wanted was my food stamps. I really, and I got sober. And I didn't expect that, and I didn't plan for it, and I didn't necessarily want it. Kind of, I didn't know what to do then. And I went and I rebuilt my life. Right, I got a job as a night security guard at a hotel, and that turned into being a restaurant job, and that turned into managing that. And then 5 years later, I was managing. I was an executive at Hilton. 5 years after that, I moved to LA and was working for a film director. And I just all these things, all these opportunities came up. People said, "Try this, do this. You want to do this?" I kept saying yes. And I hadn't gone to college, so I didn't really know. I didn't have like a career path or anything. So I just did what was put in front of me. And so I'm in San Francisco, and I read this, and words that were given to me years before, which was this idea of your deepest, darkest secrets will one day be the most powerful tools you have to help other people, which are nice words, right? They're just not, but it didn't really mean anything until that morning when it hit me that this is what it meant. I was ashamed of the fact that I'd been homeless. I had every opportunity to not have my life turn out that way, and my life turned out that way. So I took that deeply as like, I can't tell people that. They won't trust me. They won't believe in me. They'll just think I'm worth less. And I met with Donnie's and Donnie Sandoval from Lava May, and she put me on the board as Lava May was being formed. And as we developed some programs there, I went on to work there full time. And so that was really the moment that things got interesting for me and maybe even about me. So there's nothing remarkable in my life until that, at least feeling like I had the opportunity to give back. And I kept meeting uh, amazing people on the streets, right? And I through this understanding and kind of like I kept this ethos of opportunity was given to me, so it's my place to try and give opportunity to you, to try and bring the people and the opportunities together in the same place, right? Give you a chance and not just say, here's a program we've developed where you go in and you all 50 of you do the exact same thing, and then you go out and dice carrots or something like that. It's like, what is it that you want? Let's find that for you, and let's let you develop as a human being. right? Let's not just give you a menial job and expect you to be grateful. Let's set you on the path where you are fulfilled. You live in the neighborhood you want to live in, you eat when you want to eat, what you want to eat, you have the family, you raise the children, you do all the things that you came here to do. Because everybody on the street was a child at one point, and they never imagined they were going to end up on the street. And their dreams that they had are as valid as the dreams I have, and they deserve as much opportunity as I was given. So it was really that. It's like I was thrown into this thing with like, okay, I'm just going to spend all of my energy to try and do this and bring this to people. And I'm still trying to do that, always trying to find ways to bring the opportunity to people.
Thank you. I got even new questions from listening to you talk,
Yeah.
and it's just like I've heard you talk so many times before. So, okay, let's go back to the program that helped you get sober. A lot of times, people make comments about how people on the street, they cause it themselves because they are drunk and they're druggies, and sometimes have to tell people you do it too, but you're just inside your house, so nobody cares. And then some of these medications that people get addicted to are prescribed by doctors. Like when I got my wisdom teeth taken out, I had a long line of just horrible medicine that they wanted me to get on for pain. And it was just like, I knew that if I really took this, I could get addicted and then that's it. But when it came to you going into your program and then you coming back out sober, do you think that having programs like that, first, do you think there's enough? And then second, have you I've heard of some that come with like crazy stipulations that you have to give up, like some of your rights
Yeah.
essentially, in order to go in. And then also, like, did you have to pay for anything?
Okay. So because I was on general assistance and food stamps, I did not have to pay it, right? The county put me through this. Um, and I think, boy, there are lots of questions in there. The whole issue around recovery kind of goes into the whole issue around mental health issues for people who are experiencing homelessness. And when I started working in San Francisco, the number assessed up there was about 38% of the people on the streets had mental health issues, which included drug and alcohol issues, but other mental health issues, from everything from psychosis to mild depression. They had the whole gamut of things. Now, I've heard there was a study done last year, I think. Trying to think of the big Pepperdine, I think, did it. They said as many as 55%, fell into that mental health. So let's say from 35 to 55 or whatever percent of the population has got mental health issues. One, I think there's plenty of access to sobriety. Um, so like to programs like this, which you can go through, I think there are plenty that are funded by the government that are fine. Mine was funded by the government. My counselor was a Vietnam vet with a ponytail, a balding patch and a ponytail and a Harley. So there's kind of like all these people come into this kind of work. Um, and I think that the program of AA is accessible enough to people, and there are other 12-step versions of that are accessible. So, as basic AA is kind of fleshed out and been modernized, because it's 80 years old now. So I think there's enough of that. I know that there are some places that ask that you give up some of your rights, and it's kind of an interesting action. Like as a purist, I'd say yes. Surrendering my right to destroy myself is something that is probably something I should do, right? Um, but people fight that, and that is, I think, part of the disease of alcoholism. Or I think a lot of people fight that for a lot of reasons, but particularly in the disease of alcoholism, really doing what somebody else tells you to do is just the antithesis. It's a gigantic ego problem, childish emotions, and overblown ego, and lots of mental health issues behind that. Often trauma. For women, it's often sexual abuse. It's just there's a lot of stuff in the background that you've built this veneer, this wall to hide and fight and hold yourself together. So being asked to give up things like uh, being asked to give up to drink, or use drugs, being asked to give up um, a relationship. They say those kinds of things. I don't know what would have stopped me from if they had asked me to give up anything other than 28 days of 5 or 6 hours a day. I might have had a problem, but they really made it easy and accessible for me. So programs that exist today, if you're living there and you've got to live with everybody and you've got to sign these contracts, I think that's just for the safety of the community. And this is the case where the needs of the community do trump the needs of the individual, at least to start, because you can't even find out what the people really need until you remove the drugs and alcohol, and then they understand what they need, and then you can move forward. And that's not for everybody, but for that, let's say 30 to 50% of people. The population overall, 10% of the entire population suffers from alcoholism or use issues, whether it's drugs or you say alcoholism is kind of the pan term for it. And as you said, if you're living in a nice neighborhood and you're drinking yourself to passing out every night, people may look at you like, oh, but if you're living on the street and you're doing that, people really judge you. And that is, I could talk a whole day about how we have turned that kind of failure into a spiritual malady or a spiritual, like, that is as anti-American as anything could be, because we are, even though I'm going to probably piss a few people off, but even though often people will say we're a Christian country uh, or have that Judeo-Christian ethos, I think really the ethos that we have is capitalism. Capitalism is the one thing we all agree on as being the most important thing. Is the spiritual basis. It's the thing we love. It's the thing we worship. It's the thing we work for. We consider that to be our measure of success. All those things. So if you look at like what our values, I think capitalism is really the basic value of the U.S. and probably Western countries as a whole. So anything beyond that is really a stretch for people. And when you start to find people for whom capitalism doesn't work, if they don't end up on the streets, they end up being in the position of being like, hey, I want to change things. I want things to be different. So we all kind of are drifting along the bottom of the success, metric probably. But I don't have any friends in this business who are driving sports cars. But it's the ethos of America is success and capitalism. When you fail at that level, regardless of the reason, you are looked on and judged. And that was actually why I was so afraid to tell people I'd been homeless in the first place.
Interesting. And all you had to give up was like the drugs and well, you
Yeah,
were but like the alcohol. So I
yeah,
remember when I was on the street in 2018 with you guys, I ran into a couple people who were just like their program either had to be like a year long and they couldn't go
yeah.
outside. And I was just like a year inside. And then there was another one saying that there was like a church going around saying that they were helping people, but you had to give up like your food stamps and all of the little income that you might get from the government. And then there was another program where someone said they got a job, but they had to come back and check in every 4 hours. So like they ended up losing their job because they couldn't come check in every 4 hours. And then the place also wasn't even allowing for like the manager to call and be like, they're present at work right now. So when I heard all of that, it was just like, why are we making it more difficult?
Yeah,
Especially in Los Angeles, like you have so many people. Let's make it a little less difficult for people to bounce back. So it's interesting that you just had to give up like the issue, I guess, at hand and not
yeah,
the extra stuff. Because I know when I think about it, it's just like, man, if somebody just came and told me you have to give me your money and your food money and your this and your that, would I do it? And then I think
mhm,
about all the times where I was supposed to give up something or stop doing something. However, I didn't, or it took a little bit of time. And I think that sometimes people forget that too. Like, what are some things that you were supposed to do that you haven't did or took you forever to do? And think about that the next time you like look at someone and judge them because
Yeah.
come on now. Okay. And then so from my next question, when you were on the streets and such, you say you were living off of some of your friends, and so at this point, you lost communication with your family completely.
Yeah, pretty much. After going home and stealing from my parents, like going through my, my mother's jewelry box and taking valuables and selling them so I could keep using, they really didn't want me around. They didn't want me around my younger brother. They didn't want me around my nieces and nephews, and perfectly within their rights. And there was some hard feelings around my coming out, and I didn't actually talk with my mother for almost 3 years. My dad kept communication going, but she really was not. So I was completely cut off from that. So I just didn't go home anymore. And I think that just happens for a lot of people. You lose touch with your family. And my new family, my family of choice, was really the family that put me back together, and that community, that feeling, that sense of belonging that I eventually found, and being able to find people to replace those kind of the parenting things and learning how to do stuff, critically important, so that I could go back to my family at one point and be part of the family again. Because between, like, I was thinking, like 3, 4 years in, I started going back and hanging out with my family, and they were happy to see me and see me not drunk, right? So I started to come back for Thanksgiving and remember to send birthday cards and things like that. But it took a while to come back. It took a while to win their trust back.
That's nice, and I'm glad that you guys have reconnected. I know
Yeah,
that there's one organization who whole purpose is just to reconnect people with their families.
yeah, yeah,
And I think it started because one guy was on the street on social media and he was talking, trying to show people like it's okay to talk to people, guys. They're people. We're humans. We're all humans.
yeah,
And someone in the comments was just like, "Hey, that's my dad." And from there, a whole organization was like, "Okay, we got to do this because this is
yeah,
ridiculous that people don't know where their family is." So,
yeah.
okay. Prior to being homeless, did you care about the homeless?
The So in my house, they were just bums, right? Uh, my mom would say, "Look at that bum. Look at that." That kind of. Even I think in those days, even hobos were like still a thing, that ancient word. But they were really just considered bums. They were the people we didn't want to talk about. And where I grew up in central Minnesota, a lot of Native Americans or First Nations people would come into the city around the beginning of the month, and we would see them for a week or two, and my parents would just disparage them. So every time when you saw that kind of out of control drinking, that kind of thing, um, I learned, I judged that pretty harshly. That said, watching my dad's out of control drinking at home, which nearly cost him his life, um, that was that thing you're talking about. Like, we were a successful, happy family, but that was going on at home. So I had these people out on the street acting out, and I had stuff going on at home with all the trauma and craziness going on there. Very hard for me to equate them. Very hard for me to find later on where my place was in that spectrum of but I just didn't care. And it actually took me a while. I had to build some relationships among other people. Like, I was eating at the soup kitchen, and some of the people who we were doing meetings with during the day, I fell in love with those guys. They were just amazing people. I tell you stories that would make us cry, that are like these just beautiful human beings who, abandoned by their families or by whatever, hit the skids and became beautiful human beings again. And I could tell you that story 100 times or 1,000 times over. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So I didn't care then, and I didn't know what to do until I tried a couple of things. I started a nonprofit with some friends in 1994, And I'll tell you a little story. Actually, there's a great guy named Steve Alberg. Steve is passed now. So um, uh, Steve had been a very successful DJ in a time when Frankie Knuckles, this was the 80s kind of thing, at the beginning of the whole DJ, right? Steve was very successful, built quite a career. Um, when I met Steve, he was living in a residential treatment program in Minneapolis, where I lived. And he had Hep C and had about 6 months to live. And he was this funny, vibrant, just lovely, lovely guy, right? He had not talked with his wife and kids in a couple of years, and really great guy. And I had just purchased a house. Um, so I said, hey, you don't need to live the rest of your life in this shelter. Why don't you just come and live at my house? And so we became roommates and great friends, really just a great human being. Um, at some point he said, hey, you know how to get stuff done. I was Um, so he said, let's start this group. And, these are early days. So we're talking a bulletin board online, right? Where we had all these young, energized people who we were going to meetings with. And we put a little bulletin board up and we called all of the nonprofits around Minneapolis, St. Paul, and said, hey, we could put 100 people at your doorstep on 24 hours notice as volunteers. So what do you need? And we called it Servers of Service, SOS, Servers of Service. And we started doing this, right? Taking all these young people from the meetings and putting them like sorting coats, like we would sort coats for the drive. Subway did this huge drive, and so we're sorting coats, doing all this stuff, restocking food banks. We are unloading trucks and loading trucks and doing all these things for the food shelves. And this goes on for a couple of years. And I say that reflecting back that Steve was given 6 months to live. So a couple of years later, he's going strong, right? Doing all this work. And we end up putting on the largest Thanksgiving meal in Minneapolis, St. Paul history at the First Baptist Church in downtown Minneapolis. I mean, he cooked for like 3 days. He loved to cook. So we just, all this food, and we gave away like 4,000 bags of groceries and 2,000 winter coats and all these things. We did all this, and this is about the time I moved to LA. That organization went on to buy an old hotel and refurb it, and they went from a nonprofit to for-profit status, social business, early days kind of idea. And Steve died in 2009. I got the call. He was down in Central America working at building houses, and he passed away. So I know this is maybe a stretch for a lot of people, but in 1989, he was given 6 months to live. And in 2009, he passed away. He gave his entire life to serving other people. He gave up everything. He got back with his family eventually, but he never made big money again. He just volunteered and lived where he could and lived with, and he did that. And he's one of my heroes. I mean, it's nice to have a hero who you've got that kind of relationship with. And I hope someday to do something in honor of his kind of devotion and commitment. But that story is amazing to me, that he lived 20 years giving his whole life to working with people who are underprivileged, poor and unhoused. And I know that kind of power exists. I see, and you see, I'm sure, people all the time who are, this power is coming through them that is just astonishing, that we call it charisma or whatever. That they are just so in tune with what's going on that they bring all this energy and all this joy and all this work to what they're doing. And they're just the loveliest people you can meet. And sometimes they're fresh off the streets. Sometimes they are coming from the suburbs where they've got a comfortable life, but they're channeling this energy, this beautiful, positive, this can be done. And I find myself aligning myself with those people all the time, because like me, they believe that homelessness is a solvable problem. We can do this. In Los Angeles, the official city count is 59,000. This is a year old now, so the 2019 count, maybe it was 2020, was 59,000 people in LA County. But anecdotally, we know it's usually about 3 times that number. really, because you just miss a lot of people. So let's say we've got 150 to 180,000 people on the streets here, living in their cars or on their mom's couch or their grandma's couch, or just those people who are considered unhoused in the
It was
larger.
one of those point in time counts.
Yes, right. So January,
I did
end
that
of,
before.
yeah, right. So I think you did that in 2018, right? Did you do one of those, or
I did
2019?
it. I think I did it in 17. I think I did in 20.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had us walking around, and we would only count people we see, but we had to stop at a
Yeah.
certain time, and then we'll count certain people, but then we'll like really count the people who talk to us, not just. It was just I was like, this is so inaccurate. But
Yeah. Yeah. But it was the best. It's the best. Yeah. It's the best that we have right now. But we know that the numbers are inaccurate, right? But I guess the point of all this being, it's a huge number, and 10% of all the unhoused people in America are in California.
mm,
So that's a huge, a huge part of our population, and a lot of people come here. It's a very aspirational place to go. You come to Venice Beach and rebuild your life, or go to San Francisco, and you think it's the summer of love, and it's really just tech hell. So, uh, I keep finding these people were committed to the fact that homelessness can be solved. Homelessness is not an intractable problem. It's not a permanent problem. It's been 50 years that it's been really an issue around here, but it's been alive. I mean, the first wave of displaced people came to California after the Civil War. That's how long this has been going on. Skid Row existed in Los Angeles by 1904. Right? We know it had a location actually right about where City Hall is now. In San Francisco, you think in 1910, the woman, the big Glide church that's up in San Francisco, that amazing church that's there on Eddy Street. In 1910, this millionairess gave her foundation, or set up a foundation for them to serve the people of the Tenderloin. So this issue has been going on a long time. Let's say 130 years, at least 140 years, right? That we've been doing little or nothing about it. Occasionally things, but starting in the 80s, we started making it part of our culture to unhouse people who are poor, to not give them opportunity, to cut them off, to take people with mental illnesses and send them out into the streets, to quit funding the programs that kept them alive and kept them safe, right? We made those decisions as a country. And I keep coming back to people and saying, we did this to ourselves. This is not something that just accidentally happened while we were all going along. We made the decisions, voted in the people who decided to do this. We didn't stop it. We didn't fund it other ways. We didn't do all those things. We just let this kind of capitalistic, and I know there's a kind of religion that's Calvinistic, but it's the modern Calvinistic view where it's like, if you're doing well, God loves you. And if you're not doing well, God doesn't love you. And so rich people deserve to be rich, like Amway. It's the kind of Amway mentality. So we did this to ourselves. We intentionally, consciously, since the 1980s, when we shut down the mental institutions and sent people out onto the streets, have been intentionally mistreating a large and growing part of our population. We've created a society that's too difficult for them to succeed in. We've told everybody that they're born equal when we know they're not. And we have made it their fault if you don't succeed. So we've created an emotional, spiritual, and financial black hole for people to fall into. And somehow we've just been okay with it. We've just been like, well, that just is the way it is. When in fact, we did it to them, and we continue to do it to them. And, after sitting around watching and being part of this all this time, I believe more and more that the government programs are great. Those big programs are great. Build the housing, please. Just do those things. but the spiritual and emotional black hole that we've dumped these people into is something that you and I and all of those people like us who care can do something about. We can do that, and it's almost on a one-to-one individual basis, where we need to find people, and the Maslow's hierarchy work, right? Where you give them the basic security, the health, and then so you've got their physiological needs, their safety needs, and then the community, the sense of belonging, and then fulfillment. That's a very compacted or shortened version of Maslow's. But we can do all of those things, kind of compress them at once. We just have to do them, and it's up to us. It is on us right now. Those of us who have succeeded, those of us who are making it, those of us who are concerned and caring, it's on us to step in and say, hey, we can create the community by accepting these people back. 130 people lose their housing every day in LA County. And 100 people get rehoused within 6 months, but 30 people stay out on the street. So that's a whole city block or more of tents. You walk out my door. When I moved into this house 2 years ago, I had people from the neighborhood leaving their stuff in the yard, right? The other neighbors had just been okay with it because it's kind of a little bit hidden up here. It's a gated yard. So I talked to the guys who were doing that, and I said, it's okay, leave your stuff here. That's part of the community. They don't have anywhere else to put their stuff. So I walked down the street in a Hollywood, and they're just tent cities growing up everywhere, under every underpass, and we're losing the battle every day, and we're choosing to lose it. And we, in 2016, I wasn't living here at the time, but Angelinos voted to pay to fix it and raise, it was Prop H and Prop HHH. Do you remember those, right? So took a little while to get that money together, but it was $1 billion for one chunk of money and 400 million in some for another.
Are they finally using it?
Well, they started to use it. But what they did first is they hired the people. So they doubled, or I heard at one point somebody said they almost tripled the size of the government organization to serve. So they just hired, because they're going to put all these people out on the street. And then COVID happens. And so all of this money was done to, all this money was spent to upgrade everything. And then we have this happen, and nothing is really moving forward, or it's not moving the way we hoped it would. And to build a house in LA, housing for people, is a bit ridiculous. And the last number I heard was it costs $500,000 to build every 1-bedroom apartment. So if you've got
$500,000
for a 1-bedroom apartment to build
that's
that,
crazy. Okay,
it's crazy.
I remember seeing an
all
article.
Of a sudden,
there was an article saying that the city was building affordable housing on Skid Row one time. It was like a building, and I remember reading it, and it was like each unit was like $160K, and I was just like, what?
Yeah. I'm glad that can be that low, right? I don't. When I had seen this article about it being a $500,000, the writer went on to say, so $1 billion doesn't go that far. If all of a sudden 2 apartments cost $1 million, you get what, 20,000 apartments? My math could be totally off there, but you got 150,000 people, $1 billion builds 20,000 apartments, or even if it only builds 50,000 apartments, you're still not housing enough people. And that's the people who are unhoused today. Those are the people who are on the streets at this exact moment, not the 30 who are losing their housing every day. So we're
post-COVID people.
Yeah, right. So let's already in 2019 numbers, there are 500,000 people, 600,000 in Los Angeles County who pay more than 90% of their income, their take-home income, in rent. So that's 600,000 people like on the edge already. And I don't know how many of them have lost their jobs recently. It's just, there are already people who are struggling to make it economically. LA is the most expensive city in America because um, we have a low wages, high rent. So people will work here for nothing, and employers will hire and pay nothing, and then the rents are higher than. So they may not be as high as in San Francisco, but remember the poverty rate in San Francisco for a family of four was like 110 or 120,000 a year. Yeah, right. So that's because the incomes were so high, and here the incomes are so low, right? So we've got that 500,000 people, 600,000 people waiting already, paying 90%. And then, other issues like 500,000 people in Los Angeles County go to bed hungry every night. So you've got food insecurity here. And, you've got people coming here in droves because we're still an aspirational place, where this beautiful, wonderful place where opportunity can happen, or things can work out. So people are still coming here, and add on to all of the other things we are facing here right now. I talked to some of my clients about what we are facing, with COVID. Are we going to be able to survive or to serve the next 500,000 people, even the next 100,000? We can hardly serve 50,000, 60,000, right? So what are we going to do with the next 100,000 or the next 100,000 after that? And, how do we keep them in their housing? Because that's probably the smartest way, right? Keep them in their housing, find a way to it's not just an eviction moratorium, but actually to send enough money through so that they've got money to pay their rent, because eviction moratoriums are eventually going to become unsustainable because landlords can't afford them, right? So there's just this, how do we move this money through the system to support it all the way down? And keeping people in their housing is the least expensive, most effective way to stop homelessness. But we're not doing it today. So it's like, how do we talk to the people? How do I say to the people who are making policy? This is always where we end up with this. There's several levels of straight up. You've got people like the people I work with who are working on the ground, on the street, doing direct service. And you've seen those people, you've worked with them, so they're doing direct services, they're really on the ground. And then you've got people all the way up to the head of government who are creating um, the system, right? Who are doing the policies that affect all the way down. And we need to have people at every one of those levels. Um, I, you know, so how do we talk to people right now and say, hey, I know we're in this incredibly divided time where we just, we are red against blue, this ridiculous fight for the bottom, rung of the ladder. Um, how do we include the people who are unhoused or are going to become unhoused in the solution to this? And it's just going to be more dire as the months go on.
And is LASA playing a positive effect in any of this? Because
I think
I don't think many
yeah.
people know that LA has like their own government agency to
Yeah.
homelessness. Like nobody else really has that, but LA does. And so are they doing anything?
I think loss is amazing, right? Um, they they're the ones they had to restructure and reorganize. I'm sorry, what's that?
I said, and it's run by a woman now.
Yeah, great. But it's like an intergovernmental. When you say it's a governmental agency, it's actually the city and the county of Los Angeles joined together in this, and it's incredibly smart way to do it. And you look at this is another show altogether about how it's all broken out throughout the county. But to have them all together, gathering the data and sharing the programming between the city and the county. In Los Angeles, the county, LA County is 5,000 square miles, give or take. It's huge, right? It's this gigantic place. The city of LA, and LA County has 89 cities within it. Los Angeles is the largest, but there are 88 other cities inside of LA County who all have different needs. So the Board of Supervisors, they're the power. They're really the people who make, they have the money and they have the ability to move huge chunks of people and money. City council members in LA are much smaller, um, have much less power or ability to do these things. They try and do things, but they don't have the mandate, and they're also a little more sensitive to the voters or vulnerable to a voter rebellion because they as county supervisors, there's 10 million people in the county, and I think there are 8 supervisors. They have huge chunks of voters. So they can, if 10% of their vote drops away because they're mad at them, it's not going to really get them booted out. But on a city council level, you lose those kinds of numbers for something you do that is a policy that upsets the business community or something. So they're a little more cautious and a little more susceptible to losing their position. But LASA coordinates on on the huge macro level, but they go all the way down through the service planning areas, through the curriculum of care areas, they're all the way down to the people who you and I work with who are working doing drug services on the street. I know who I can call in my particular area that I work in to go and have a meeting with, or have that monthly meeting with all the other providers, and that's invaluable. So as an organizing force, as a data collecting force, nobody could do that better. uh, just they're just really good, and they also work with outside. They're working with USC on a bunch of stuff. I'm sure they're working with UCLA. They work with the best academic institutions around to try and get the newest models for working on all the data and all that. They really are great as an organizing force, uh, but there's a limit to what that can do. I go back to this. We've got tens of thousands of people in this spiritual, psychological black hole with hopelessness, who we need to find a way to give them hope. Because if I can't convince you that there's a place for you in our culture, I can't convince you to not go to bathroom on the street, to not tag a building, to not, because you've got nothing invested. If you have nothing invested, if I'm not going to invest something in you, you've got nothing invested in making this thing work. Why? Why even try? Why not just act out? Why not? Because nobody's going to help. And that hopelessness, I just, I just, I cannot stress enough how it's going to come down to communities, church groups, communities, school groups, neighborhoods, whatever, to reach out to the people who are unhoused at the end of your block and say, hey, I want you to be housed. What if there's 150,000 unhoused people in LA? And half of them or a third of them need mental health issues. So that's a different, would say 50,000 Angelinos opened up and said, I've got a spare bedroom. We could cut.
At one point.
So I have seen the one place I have seen it succeed is a Safe Place for Youth, SPY, in Venice. This amazing group in Venice. They worked with people in the neighborhood to take the high school age children into their homes so that they could complete school and have a stable home environment. I saw them give a presentation on this, and it was just such a great idea. And the neighborhood responded and said, yes, we can do that. So it's a matter of somebody coming up with an idea and packaging it or writing it up so that it's well enough presented to people who are open to it, and then executing it and having the feedback loop so people can call back and say, hey, this is not working with this child, or this is not working with this person. Is there somebody else who might work better? Or this person left, and is there somebody else? So there's a lot of structure that needs to be, or infrastructure that needs to be built to make it happen. But I still think it is probably uh, probably the most direct way we could solve not only people on the streets, but also give them the sense of family and the sense of community that helps people build back that hope and the dignity and that sense of agency where they can suddenly say, hey, I can go do this job. I can do this. I know I did this. I volunteered doing this for a while. So now I know I can do this to make money. Those kinds of things that structure needs to be there. I don't know another program where there's been adults who've been housed like that, other than the great story that I think it's a city in Belgium. Um, I think it's pronounced Giel. The story of this
Oh,
place,
yeah.
the mental health. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that's been studied a lot, and people have been trying to figure out if they could replicate that in the States, and nobody can quite figure out how to do that. But that is evidence that this would work, and that if we took people in and shared our homes with them, that we could end this problem and all the aspects of this problem. Mental health being the one that we really need to bring in extra outside um, professionals for, but it's community-based solutions which are always the most effective. So it's finding out what are those communities who are willing to step in and do this kind of work, to take this kind of risk, open their home to somebody who they don't know. Uh, that's I don't know. I'm not the person to do that. I would love to be able to say I could. I don't have I would love to help somebody build that kind of structure someday. But right now, that's a huge undertaking. Yeah.
Um, dang. Oh, about the kids thing, that's also the model that the foster care system is starting to undertake too, because their numbers are just getting ridiculous. So we found out a couple weeks ago that like they're really encouraging people to just, hey, take them into your home. We'll still pay you, but we can't afford to have these big buildings of just kids anymore, you know? So
Yeah.
that's also definitely interesting. And then when it does come to solving, right, we're just talking solutions. Um, I think some people are, I hope some people are starting to see that it's more than just you need a job because, I've met a lot of people on the street who do have jobs. But if
Yeah.
you don't have no
Yeah.
bank account to have a savings, and if you don't have a credit, and if you don't have first month, last month, and a deposit, how are you supposed to get an apartment?
Yeah.
And then when you talk about how expensive it is in LA, and then I think LA didn't pass or didn't approve that bill to have rent control.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's just like, so what's next when people do get that dignity and that feeling and that urgency? Should they leave the city?
Oh, wow.
Some cities are seeing influxes in homelessness, like in Austin,
Yeah.
for instance. So many from New York are in Austin right now, and it has grown like crazy, tents everywhere, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, guys, this is not okay. It was so controlled, and it's getting out of control. Like, and then the
Yeah.
governor stepped in, and he didn't step in nicely. So, but they are starting to have like shower services and stuff because there's an
Yeah.
importance in appearance. You can't get nothing if you don't look like nothing. As well as there's like a new innovation task force. I seen them speak at South by last year, and I had to just call them out because the lady was just like, okay, guys, so we learned that the first step is you just gotta talk to these people. And I said, no, really, honey, really. Now I'm up there. I was like, so we're here talking about tech and blockchain. Are we gonna figure out ways to track people's data so that when it is their turn to come off the street, it's not up? You can't come off the streets because we can't find your ID or we don't know your social security number, so you got to go back on the street. Like these
Yeah.
limited wait times.
Yeah.
So I wonder. Also in Austin, we also have more land than you guys because we live in
Yeah.
Texas. So the tiny home community thing is starting to pop up. And I think that because we have one tiny home community that's been successful so far, though they serve such a small population, and I think a specific population at that too, that other cities have saw that and, oh, Austin's solving the problem. Let me send you down. And it's just like, send them down after they are emotionally okay, not beforehand, because now they can't handle it either. So when it comes to LA, even if it's not moving across the country, should they move to another part of California that's a little bit cheaper? But then when it's time to move to rural places, that's a downfall because you don't have the same access to all the things you need, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so it's just,
yeah, yeah. You have just laid out all of the problems with the locality of where we have people staying who are unhoused. And like in Los Angeles, I just said, LA County, 5,000 square miles, and a lot of it is actually undeveloped. So you even get up in LA City, up in the first district, up, or sorry, LA County, up, I think it's like Placenta. It's kind of this high, the northern edge. There's so much undeveloped land out there. But you're exactly right. So if I live in Hollywood, and I'll go back up with another different number. Uh, 75 to 80% of the people who live on the streets live in the neighborhood where they last had housing or where they grew up. So those people, it's like if I lost the house I'm in now, I would stay in this neighborhood because I know all the resources. All my friends are here. I know what buses are here. I know what train station is here. I know all the places I could go. I know the places I could find to sleep and hide out. I know the safe places to store my stuff. Right. So this is my neighborhood. And if I'm on the street, and this is where we came up with this idea of your unhoused neighbor, not just somebody who is, homeless over there. This is my neighbor. This person does not have housing, lives in my neighborhood, wants to live in my neighborhood for whatever reason, you know, um, but they have the right to live in my neighborhood. And as a neighbor, I have to respond. So people who are unhoused like to stay in the neighborhoods where they're familiar, comfortable, and I believe they have the right to stay in those neighborhoods. We've talked about in the city and county, housing out in the edges, or even filling apartments that are empty right now, that are new developments out in the suburbs. Don't have a car. There's no bus service out there. There are no services, and there are no friends. So the whole community, they're friends, right? And I'm telling you, like specifically not like Skid Row. Skid Row is as vibrant and beautiful a community as I have ever seen. There are artists, there are musicians, there are stuff happening, there's community organizing, all these things happening, with 10,000 people on the streets and a few thousand more living in housing there. But it is a vibrant community. And when you go down and you talk to these people, it's their neighborhood and it's where they live. And a lot of them choose to stay there um, because of what the neighborhood provides for them. So having a vibrant community is important to somebody on the street as it is to me. I love my neighborhood and I love my neighbors. So I want to stay here. And if you love your neighborhood and love your neighbors, it doesn't make sense for you to be moved out to the outskirts, or even a bunch of you moved out to the outskirts where there's no services, there's no central city, there's none of the things that you love about living in LA. If you want to move to the suburbs, great. That should be your option, right? But understand that you're going to get pushback from the NIMBYs who don't want those people in their neighborhoods, right? In their suburban neighborhoods. So NIMBYism, a whole extra layer. Again, we could talk hours on that one, but that is uh, as we talk about the building the compassion and the understanding, and finally taking a stand as a nation, that homelessness just has to end. There's no reason why there are hundreds of billions of dollars out in the world, and we still have, I think nationally it's like 5 million. Is it 5 million? 5 million unhoused people? Maybe less than that. Sorry on that. Anyway, nationally, the number of people who are unhoused, there's enough money. There is definitely enough money to fix this. It's now we have to figure out, do we have the drive? Do we have the commitment to fix it? And finally, to really fix it, not just keep band-aiding and plastering over the holes in the walls, but provide a long-term solution. And this is maybe the hardest thing when I talk to people about what um, what is going to be required of this, is that it's not going to happen. Even if you put somebody in housing, they're not going to be better next week.
Right.
right? LA Family Housing, an amazing organization that works here in the Valley. I went to one of their presentations, and they're one of the big and successful groups that houses people here. Uh, their plan when you move into one of their apartments is they're there when you sign your first lease, and then they're there when you sign your next lease. So they're committed not just to get you in the housing and check the box and move on to the next person. They keep the services going while you build your life in that home, in your new house, right? And then they're there when you move to the next place, where hopefully you're now working and you've got your medication stabilized and all these things. So now you can move to the next place, and they're there with you. It's that kind of. It takes a long time, like 2 years minimum, right? I know people that it's taken many, many years for the mental health to come back, and it's that patience. How do I keep telling people, you've got to have the patience. This is not going to fix, even if we dumped all the money and took all the people off the streets tomorrow, you still got mental health issues, you still got dignity, self-worth issues, you've still got opportunity issues. How do we provide all of these things? And it's not going to happen overnight. You and I aren't going to fix it. None of the people who look at this are going to fix it themselves. But together, we could take, the next 10 years and we could really create an answer. There is an answer there. I think it's really a matter of our committing to it.
And then as we close up, just two more things. One, I saw that Amazon headquarters in Seattle has built in a section where like homeless people can come stay, as but then I think they also go and work for Amazon. Do you think that we should see more corporations get involved like that?
Uh, yes, definitely. This is one of those things. So there's a part of this where we'd say, well, Amazon, I don't like Amazon. They're just greenwashing, or they're trying to make their own. I'm sorry, I just don't care. I don't care what, I don't care why you are offering a solution. I'm not in a place to judge that. And I tell you, you may have the most selfish uh, reason in the world
Motives.
for offering a solution, but once you see that solution working, you will be changed. And I have faith that that is always the way that's reciprocal. Even if you start grudgingly handing out the money or giving you the opportunity, you will be changed by what you see happening in human beings. Nobody is immune to that. Or if they are, there's the psychopaths, the sociopaths who are immune to that. But you see people changing, you see their lives getting better, you feel better. Great. So Amazon does this, wonderful. If we saw Google was a big supporter in Venice for years. I don't know, I haven't followed since everything's clamped down. But Google, has that their Venice campus down there. They really worked with the neighborhood to try and find ways to end the housing problems there. In San Francisco, Dell Seymour. Do you know Dell? Do you remember Dell? Uh, and I forget the name of the Dell. He's just he's a fixture down there in Skid Row, but he has a work readiness training program where the people who are in the program go through. I think it's a 12-week program. At the end of which he's partnered with uh, Dolby, Twitter, and what's Zendesk, right? I think those are the three he's partnered with, that they will actually take graduates from his program and they pair them one to one. You have a mentor who you work with, and you start working at Zendesk or at Twitter or at Dolby. And that mentor stays with you for the first, I don't know, 6 months, a year, kind of thing, to help get you into the working world. And what Dell found, and I thought this was interesting, was that a lot of the people had been away from work for so long that they really didn't even have the skills. Like, I need to set my alarm for 6 a.m. so that I can have a shower and get to work by 8 o'clock, because it's going to take a half hour on the train. He said people didn't even have skills at that level anymore. They had just forgotten about it. Or maybe they were raised in a family or kicked out of, nobody worked in this family, or they had that. They just don't have the skills for the basics. So he was really basic training. Like, this is how you do this, is how you need to dress. for work. This is how you need to show up. This is, how you take your break, how you talk to people. They don't owe, it's like just setting people up for success in work. So if every employer in the Bay Area, if every employer in Los Angeles, every employer in Austin opened up a handful of jobs where they would take people off the streets, the effect of that would be remarkable. And again, I don't care why you do it. I don't care if you do it just because you get the subsidy from the state or the city. You have the chance to change people's lives. And when their lives change, you will change. And I think that is a powerful way. We have such a corporate strong economy. Corporations have so much power and so autonomy that they really have the power to change things. And somebody like Amazon or Microsoft or Apple, if they took people in and got them working, that's those are jobs that people can succeed in, and you can grow in. Uh, I yeah, so I think please, every corporation, please do this. You will end homelessness, and we'll give you all the credit for it. That you do all the PSAs, give you all the awards, for the work. Just please, let's end this.
That's good. And then my last question, right? My last question is, if there's someone wanting to start a nonprofit to aid in this, right? What are some nonprofits we need to see? I'm a firm believer that some nonprofits that exist, we did not need to see. Okay, they're enough of you. We don't need no more. You're taking away resources, right? But I definitely, that experience in LA in 2018, it was a blessing, honestly, Yeah. And I got to see some things like how the San Francisco Center would hold mail for people. And it was just like, oh, that's smart. We need that. Or, even came down to some of them were holding medicine for certain people because, if you didn't take your medicine, you wouldn't be qualified for housing. But if I'm living on the street, where am I supposed to lock up my medicine? Or how Gladys had Wi-Fi with the park, and then there was another organization coming that was giving out like old phones so that people can get those phone calls to go meet with their PO officer or their, this and that. So I haven't seen that much organizing anywhere else. And when it comes to others who are listening to this, no matter where they are, they're typically our audiences in the United States for the most part. But what should they do? Like, what are you as a consultant saying, okay, these are some points that you should definitely focus on?
I'm all about, it's a great question. And I don't want to bash anybody who comes to try and help, but I do understand what you're saying. I think that it's that I don't think we need more. I don't think we need more stuff.
Cool.
I think I understand, what you're talking about, and that I discourage people from giving more stuff. I really discourage people from giving old clothes. And I think that if you want to make a difference, go down to Target or to Walmart and buy, a rack full of on sale T-shirts, and some pants, underwear. Oh my God, buy underwear. You want to change somebody's life, give them a week's worth of underwear. It's just amazing because you can, but new stuff, not old stuff. On the streets, things get wrecked so fast, and a lot of the stuff ends up, somebody, they'll go and they grab a bunch of stuff and then they get it home and they look at it like, oh, there's a big hole in this, and they throw it out. And there's these jeans that these don't really fit me, and they don't have the time to look through stuff. They're just trying to get what they can. And so much of the stuff that is given away just ends up in the trash. And that's not what we want to do. It's not effective. It just creates more garbage. You're trying to do something without throwing it in the trash yourself, and it ends up just in the trash. So give new stuff, if you're going to give stuff at all, But there's plenty of food. I keep getting told this all the time. There's plenty of food.
Plenty
Please
of fruit,
stop
guys.
making, right? Please stop making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for adults. I occasionally enjoy one myself, but that's a kid's lunch, and it's I don't want to be. I won't go down that path. But if you're looking for what to do now, the things to do now have to do with employment and opportunity. If you really want to make a difference, you find out a way to go and talk to somebody, find out what they need, and then bring that to them. And this is kind of uh, the reasoning behind smaller organizations, even community neighborhood based. I love the United Way does great work. These huge organizations, St. Francis does great work. Um, uh, they just do great work. There's so many organizations like this, but it's about the opportunity. If you don't give somebody opportunity, what's the point? You can just keep feeding you and feeding you and feeding you and feeding you until you just either don't live here anymore or you get sick and die. And we can provide those daily services, and it's not that they're not important. It's just that they're one step. And you need to bring that sense of community and that sense of uh, agency and opportunity, along with the dignity, along with the stuff they get, or else you're just not going anywhere with it. So I'm encouraging people think about the next step. One of the organizations I'm working with has everything from showers to housing, and they do it very successfully in the Bay Area, right? They're there, and we're helping them expand a little bit in the Bay Area, and they want to come to LA. Another group is very successful at case management, and that is something that small case management, LASA does what they do, great. But if you get small case management that also works on the individual needs and works within the community and the neighborhood, it all comes down to the community. It all comes down to, this is my unhoused neighbor. I have to care about this neighbor. And for all the selfish reasons, you don't want this person to be sick because you don't want a sick person living in front of your house, right? Right. You don't want this person to be hungry because you don't want a hungry person. You want this person to have what they need and to be healthy. You want them to have a shower. You want them to have clean clothes. You want them to have all those things. They're your neighbor, right? You want them to have these things, even if it's for the selfish reasons of them just not being a blemish on the whatever. This Give them the things that they need as a human being and an opportunity to move forward. So it's what worked for me. And it's the only thing that I can honestly say I know. I'm not trained in this. I'm not an expert. I don't have a degree in social work, nothing like that. I just know it worked for me. I have seen it work for other people. And I keep encouraging people who want to help to do this, to be patient, to give opportunity, and to do it with, if you can't do it with love and this friendly, at least do it with, give somebody the dignity of treating them like a human being, right? Just that, talk about the people. Yeah, just treat them like a human being. Just treat everybody like a human being. We are at this amazing time, I think, in this country. You know, we just hit a wall. 10 months ago, we just hit a wall. Everything was going, you know, whether good or bad, that's you can keep that one at home. But everything was just going, right? And we hit a wall, and I saw,
Okay.
even in this, the idea of your unhoused neighbor, you want that person to be healthy, and things like uh, when the vaccine comes out, right? You want them to be able to get vaccinated just like I can get vaccinated. I want that person on the street to be healthy. I want them to be showered and in clean clothes and a fresh pair of socks. I want them to be happy. I don't want them to be miserable living down the end of my street. I want, and if I have kids, I want my kids to see somebody who they can have compassion for. So there are things that we can do, and it's not about giving my old stuff away. Plus, I'm too cheap. I just wear all my stuff until it falls off my body. So it's the give them new things. Make sure that everybody has the dignity, and really give things with dignity. That is, you got to give opportunity, you got to give dignity, you got to invite people back and say, we want you back. No, things haven't worked out for you. We want you back. And here's a way back. I can show you this way back. And as I've said before, I, I'm not a degreed professional. I don't have a social work degree. I don't have any, I just have experience. I have my personal experience. So what I know worked for me. I've seen it work for a few other people. I've talked to other people and said, oh yeah, that works. It's just a way of people welcoming you back into the community and letting you grow there and giving you the time to find your own way, not having to like jam you into something that is not natural for you. Just the time to just, just find yourself. And everybody deserves it. We're all, whether you're religious or not, we're all children of God or higher power, or, we're all, this is the way I see we're all equal. We all have a reason to be here and a right to be here. And that alone, it is on me to look at somebody on the street and say, I know there's unlimited potential in your life. I don't know what that is, but I know the potential is there. And I have to treat you like you have unlimited potential. You could be the next whatever, but it's my job to find out what you need and then to try and bring it to you. And whether I'm doing that as a friend or a neighbor or as just how, or as a professional caseworker or whatever that is, it's that listening to the people and bringing them what they need. So there are a million different ways people become unhoused. Most of it, a large chunk of it is economic. We have this economy that is so unstable for people at the bottom, and housing prices go up and wages go down. And we see all these things happening. And if you get sick, you lose everything, and there's no mobility anymore. The opportunity to be born at one level and rise yourself up, that just doesn't exist like it used to. It hasn't for 20, 25 years. We've really stacked the mobilities so that you're just kind of where you are. And it's very rare that people break out of that.
Childcare prices
Uh,
rising.
what's that?
Childcare
Healthcare?
prices.
Oh my gosh. 1/4 of the people who end up unhoused one-fourth of the people end up bankrupt because of medical bills. That's just crazy, and there are all these metrics about upward mobility, right? uh, if you just take three families, every generation, one family is going to lose everything due to either a bad economic situation or health, right? So in the US, so it's either health brings you down or the economy brings you down. Every generation, one family of three loses everything. So the path up is really treacherous. And it is as much luck that your family is not one of those three every generation that loses. And you build, it used to be three generations. Um, around, back in the middle of the century, it was around three generations. I think it's 10 generations now to build wealth from poverty to upper middle class. I think that's and that's just crazy. That's crazy. How can we expect people to want to partake in this if there's no way? If the politicians only make rules or make laws that get them elected the next 2-year or 4-year cycle, how can we expect people whose lives depend on those policies to understand and to survive the 10 generations it would take to ride up the ladder to wealth? How, we're not, somehow the goal is wrong. Somehow we have created a situation that is so treacherous for people that we're not honoring their ability. We spend more money on making money. We focus more on Wall Street than we do on the other things. I really, at this point, I can't imagine what Wall Street really adds to our society, other than as the butt of jokes and lots of cocaine sales. And it's like, I just don't understand what the financial business does anymore. It doesn't create anything other than wealth for themselves at a tiny little margin, when they're not caught stealing whatever they're just, I think they're the worst. They're the worst aspect of our late stage capitalism. And we need to be able to create opportunities for everybody and not just for a few.
Okay. Well, that was definitely a lot. And challenge, I just challenge our listeners to really just taking everything you said and then I guess lead with more critical thought. I think just in the new building of the United States that's going to occur in 2021, that more critical thought just needs to occur. I definitely see a lot of surface level thinking and people falling for like tricks and headlines. And it's just like, you need to go deeper, you need to dive deeper. And especially with the rise of folks saying that they want a socialism type of economy and government, it's just like, you realize that's a group project.
Right. Yeah.
You can't, if you're not even doing basic things like this, how do you expect that to work? And it's not saying that, oh, we want you to give money to each person you see on the street. You could find your like little team of people, like I love all homeless people, but I still have my select few who know me by name, who know me, like we are very close. And it's like you could service them. However, I definitely think the most important piece of this, as well as the compassion part, is patience. Patience is definitely the most important part. And I challenge everyone to just think about how patient someone has been with them. And think about even how if that person wasn't in that room for you to fall back on or that thing, you would have been homeless too. I think almost everybody I've talked to can say that they had a moment where they would have been homeless, especially since after we all graduated college, for instance, and especially even now, you're not getting jobs as fast. Like there's people who go on like 6 months breaks before they get a job. But luckily, you have your parents or you have somebody that you can stay with. If that person wasn't there, what would your life be like right now? So definitely just put yourself in someone else's shoes, essentially, and remember the things that you're judging them for, you probably do it too, just on the inside of your house. So it's okay.
Yeah.
And with that, Paul, are you taking clients or anything? Like, how can the people find you if they want to get into this social enterprise stuff?
Thank you. So Paul at paulasplund.com is the fastest way to get me right now, or hello at paulasplund.com. I'm starting a project, probably will be launching in January, February of next year, called It's On Us. And website will be itsonus.la. Working with a bunch of small kind of grassroots organizations to find ways to engage people in each neighborhood. So we're really, really going down to that granular, how we can help the people on the streets. So that'll be itsonus.la. We'll be launching next year. Paul at paulasplund.com is the best way to reach me today. So, and thank you. This has been great. It's just been since the day we met, and this is one of those. If your guests don't know, Valerie was an intern for me. 2018 was it?
Yeah.
There's an old joke about be kind to your interns because one day you might be working for them. And I have just seen you skyrocket out of here. You were always just you were always just way ahead of the game in the way you're able to think and imagine how things could be. And I'm so grateful that you decided to keep at it and join us here doing this work.
I'm excited. I'm coming back soon.
Great. We still have that spare bedroom. Still have a room for you to come stay. So
listen, I'm coming back. I made up my mind.
All right. Good.
But thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you later.